Ethan Cole threw me out of a Manhattan charity gala in front of the city's wealthiest owners, fund managers, and business reporters, all because Vanessa Shaw had spilled champagne on me and started to cry. I did not beg him to reconsider. I asked hotel security to document my bleeding hand, then walked out. Less than a week later, after he defended the same woman when her car struck me at a private track, I left my wedding ring beside the separation papers and boarded a flight to Zurich. 2 years later, Ethan found me outside a hotel in the middle of a snowstorm. He dropped to his knees in the street, clutching the ring I had abandoned. "Claire, I was wrong," he said, his eyes red and hollow. "Come back with me. I don't care about the company anymore. I don't care about the Cole name. I only want you." I stood beneath my umbrella and looked down at the man who had once treated my pain like an inconvenience. Then I said the words he had earned. "You once told me love deserved only 10% of your life. You don't even have that much of mine anymore." 2 years earlier, the ballroom of the Harrington Hotel glittered beneath crystal chandeliers. Cameras flashed near the stage. Champagne flowed. Every table was crowded with people whose names moved markets or appeared on hospital wings and university buildings. It was the third public event Ethan had taken me to in 7 years of marriage. Every one of them had felt like an execution. Ethan stood at the center of the room in a black tuxedo, surrounded by board members and reporters. He looked exactly the way the business magazines liked to photograph him, controlled, sharp, impossible to reach. I, his legal wife, had been seated near a side exit. "You don't enjoy these events," he had said when we arrived. "Stay out of the way and don't say anything that could become a headline." I had learned long ago that when Ethan said he was protecting me, he usually meant he was protecting himself from being associated with me. I was speaking quietly with an older donor when Vanessa Shaw crossed the ballroom toward me. Vanessa was Cole Energy Systems' chief strategy officer. She wore a silver designer gown and a sapphire necklace Ethan had purchased at auction the month before. The necklace had caught my eye because it resembled a piece from one of my grandmother's old jewelry sketches. I had mentioned that to Ethan once over breakfast. He had not looked up from his phone. "Stop romanticizing expensive objects," he had said. "They're just stones." 3 weeks later, Vanessa wore those stones in the company's annual report photographs. She stopped in front of me and smiled as if we were friends. "Claire, it's so rare to see you out," she said. "We should celebrate." She lifted her glass. I reached for mine. Her wrist turned. Cold champagne spilled down my shoulder and across the front of my white dress. The glass slipped from her fingers and shattered against the marble floor. One jagged piece sliced my palm as I instinctively tried to catch it. Blood ran between my fingers and dotted the fabric near my hip. Vanessa covered her mouth. "Oh my God, Claire. Why did you move?" Before I could answer, her eyes filled with tears. She turned toward Ethan. "I didn't mean to do it. I only wanted to toast her." Ethan finally looked at me. For one brief second, I thought he might notice the blood. Instead, his gaze went to Vanessa's trembling mouth. "Embarrassing," he said. The word was quiet, but the people around us heard it. Conversation slowed. A few heads turned. I stared at him. My hand was bleeding. My dress was soaked. His executive was crying over a mistake she had made. And somehow, I was the embarrassing one. "Ethan," I said, "I need a towel." He loosened his bow tie with an irritated motion. "Leave." I thought I had misheard him. "What?" "Go home, Claire. Now." Vanessa touched his sleeve. "Don't be angry with her. She's probably upset." Ethan patted the back of her hand. "She always does this at public events. Ignore her." A strange calm settled over me. 7 years earlier, this man had held both of my hands and sworn that no one would ever humiliate me again. Now he was humiliating me himself. I did not cry. I did not shout. I had learned not to waste truth on a man committed to misunderstanding me. I stepped away from the broken glass. A server rushed over, horrified. "Ma'am, please, let me help." "Thank you," I said. "Please don't clear the floor yet. Ask hotel security to photograph it and send someone with a first aid kit." Ethan's expression darkened. "Don't turn this into more drama." I held up my bleeding hand. "I am asking for medical help in a room full of witnesses. That is not drama. The hotel manager arrived with a security officer. I gave them my name, requested a written incident note, and allowed the medic to wrap my palm. Vanessa stared at me as if my refusal to quietly clean up her mess were a personal attack. Then I looked at Ethan. You told me to leave, I said. I'm leaving. But I will not apologize for being hurt. I turned before he could answer. It was the first time in 7 years I had walked away without waiting for his permission. The ballroom doors closed behind me. Within seconds, the music rose again. Glasses clinked. Conversations resumed. The entire room moved on as if Mrs. Cole had never existed. At home, I photographed my hand, sealed the stained dress in a garment bag, removed 2 splinters of glass, and wrapped the wound myself. Then I opened the safe in Ethan's study. I took out my passport, my independent advisory agreement, the shareholder loan documents, records of my unpaid compensation, and the statements for the investment account my mother had left me. I scanned every page and sent Daniel Reed, the attorney who had handled my mother's estate, a single email. I need an urgent appointment. Marriage, company authorizations, and evidence preservation. The clock on the mantel reached 2 in the morning. I was not waiting for Ethan. I was waiting for my hands to stop shaking enough to finish a list of everything I needed to protect. My phone lit up with an Instagram notification. Vanessa had posted a photograph from Ethan's passenger seat. His tuxedo jacket was draped over her bare shoulders. Manhattan lights streaked beyond the window. The caption read, "Late night drive. Grateful for the one person who always shows up when I need him." The comments were worse. You two look perfect together. Ethan only smiles like that around you. You should have attended the gala as a couple. The people commenting knew he was married. They simply did not think the marriage mattered. Vanessa looked more like Ethan's partner than I ever had. She stood beside him at press conferences, traveled with him to investor meetings, and appeared in every photograph that mattered. I lived in our Upper East Side townhouse and kept the lights on. I closed the app and leaned back against the sofa. For the first time, I allowed myself to remember the whole story without editing it to protect him. I was 24 when I graduated from the London School of Economics. I had an offer from a top investment bank in New York and a career path I had worked toward since I was a teenager. At the same time, Ethan's clean energy startup was collapsing. His bank had frozen a credit line. Suppliers were demanding payment. One co-founder wanted out. Even Ethan's relatives were telling him to file for bankruptcy. He came to me late one night, exhausted and terrified. "Give me 3 months," he said. "If the company survives, I'll spend the rest of my life making this worth it." I believed him. My mother had left me 2 London apartments and a conservative investment account. I sold the apartments and documented most of the proceeds as a shareholder loan to his company. I kept the separate investment account because it was the last piece of financial advice my mother had given me before she died. Never love anyone so much that you leave yourself no way out. At 24, I thought keeping the account meant I had listened. I had not understood that money was not the only thing a woman could surrender. I rebuilt Ethan's cash flow model. I negotiated extended terms with suppliers. I called former professors, alumni, and every investor who would agree to give us 20 minutes. My university mentor, Evelyn Grant, had recently joined a European Special Situations Fund. She reviewed my restructuring plan and persuaded her partners to participate in a rescue financing alongside Helvetia International Bank. One of the financing conditions was that I sign a formal independent risk advisory agreement. I would review major financing models, verify management disclosures, and provide an independent opinion to the bank and co-investors. The contract also contained a key advisor clause. If I resigned, or if management materially misrepresented the company's condition, the lenders could pause any undrawn financing and reopen due diligence. Ethan knew about the agreement. He just refused to call it work. When reports arrived at our house, I reviewed them after midnight. When the bank had questions, I joined calls from the kitchen or flew quietly to Zurich. I never received public credit. Ethan did not want me on the board, in interviews, or in company materials. "A founder needs one clear story," he told me. "If people think my wife built the financing, they'll say I succeeded because of you." I wanted to protect his confidence, so I erased myself. When his mother became ill, I postponed my New York job and spent 6 months outside the intensive care unit. Before she died, she held my hand and whispered, "Claire, this family owes you more than it will ever repay." I told her it did not matter. Ethan had promised to love me. I thought love would balance the account. In the first year of our marriage, I became pregnant. Ethan never ordered me to end the pregnancy. He was more careful than that. He spoke about the financing round, the danger of distraction, the hours he could not spare, the possibility that investors would lose confidence if his personal life became complicated. He made me believe that keeping our baby would destroy everything we had saved. I asked when the right time would come. "When the company is stable," he said. "When we're ready." At the clinic, I waited 3 hours before the procedure. When I woke from anesthesia, he still had not arrived. Later, I discovered that Vanessa had secured the company's first major corporate client that afternoon. Ethan had hosted a celebration for her at a hotel. In our 3rd year of marriage, Cole Energy Systems went public on the Nasdaq. Vanessa stood beside Ethan for the opening bell and every television interview. I watched from home with a container of cold takeout in my lap. That night, I confronted him. I asked for 3 things: formal recognition of my advisory work, a seat at meetings where my name carried legal responsibility, and marriage counseling. Ethan accused me of trying to take credit from him. I stopped reviewing company models for 6 weeks. A lender deadline was missed, and for the first time he understood that my work could not simply be summoned whenever he needed it. He apologized, agreed to counseling, and allowed my name to appear on one risk memorandum. He attended 2 sessions. Within months, the memorandum disappeared from the next report. Vanessa resumed joining him on every trip, and my boundary was rewritten as jealousy. In our 5th year, my grandmother died. Ethan promised he would meet me at the hospital before the doctors withdrew life support. I waited beside her bed until morning and called him 11 times. He said an emergency board meeting had trapped him downtown. A week later, I saw photographs from the exact same hour. He had been at a private gallery opening with Vanessa. I moved into the guest room and told him the next lie would end our marriage. He promised there would be no more private trips with Vanessa and returned to counseling for 3 months. Then another emergency appeared, followed by another excuse. Each time I enforced a boundary, Ethan treated the boundary, not his behavior, as the threat to our marriage. Ethan liked to say love occupied only 10% of his life. The other 90% belonged to the company. But Vanessa was always standing inside that 90%. And eventually I understood that the remaining 10 had never belonged to me either. My phone lit again. Ethan had sent 3 words. Not coming home. By then, Daniel had already confirmed a call for the next morning. My documents were copied, my passport was in my bag, and the first draft of my exit plan was open on the table. I looked at Ethan's message and laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because I was no longer deciding whether to leave. I was deciding how carefully to leave. I had spent 7 years trying to solve a problem that had never been mine. I had not failed to be enough. Ethan had simply never intended to make room for me. 3 days after the gala, Daniel had drafted the separation documents and my resignation notice. We planned to serve both on Monday, after I completed one outstanding lender response and copied the last records tied to my legal responsibilities. Ethan came home before dinner and tossed a gray sweatshirt onto the sofa. "Change into that." I looked from the sweatshirt to him. "No." His eyebrows lifted. He was not accustomed to hearing the word from me. "Helvetia's regional director will be at a private driving club upstate," he said. "The bank has questions about the European facility. I need you there. That is different from asking me to take photographs of you and Vanessa." His expression hardened. "Answer the questions, then help for an hour. Vanessa has been under enormous pressure." "I will attend as the company's registered advisor," I said. "I will not attend as your assistant, your photographer, or proof that your marriage is fine." "And wear something plain," he said. "Don't make this about jealousy." I folded the sweatshirt and set it back on the sofa. "I'll wear what I choose. I'll drive myself. And when the lender meeting is over, I'm leaving." I texted Daniel the address and my expected return time before I went. I no longer needed one final answer from Ethan. I had it. What I needed was to finish my professional obligation without giving him another excuse to rewrite my departure as sabotage. The driving club occupied a private track in the Hudson Valley. Engines roared from the garages. Members in tailored jackets and racing gear drank coffee beside polished cars. I wore jeans, a gray sweater, and flat shoes, clothes chosen for a lender meeting, not for Ethan's approval. Vanessa arrived in black leather and held Ethan's arm as if they had come together. No one questioned it. I met Helvetia's regional director in the members' lounge, answered his questions, and emailed him the supporting schedule from my own account. When the meeting ended, I closed my folder and headed toward the parking area. Vanessa called after me. "You're in the background of our photos. Move a little farther left." "I'm not taking your photographs," I said. "I didn't ask you to. Just get out of the frame." I checked with the track marshal and moved into the pedestrian box he indicated, well behind the marked safety boundary. Vanessa laughed as she pulled on her gloves. "Relax, Claire. I know how to drive." She climbed into the driver's seat. Ethan turned away to speak with another member. The engine screamed. The car shot from the pit exit. For a second, I froze. The vehicle was coming directly at me. I tried to move, but the side of the car clipped my leg. I hit the pavement hard. Skin tore from my knee and elbow. Pain exploded through my hip. As the car passed, I saw Vanessa's face through the window. She was smiling. The marshal waved an emergency flag. Medical staff ran toward me. Vanessa stopped the car, climbed out, and transformed herself before she reached us. Her face crumpled. Tears appeared. "Claire, are you okay?" "I hit the wrong pedal." "I swear I didn't mean to." Ethan hurried over. He went to Vanessa first. "Stop crying," he said, putting an arm around her. "It was an accident." A medic cut the fabric around my knee and began cleaning the wound. Another asked whether I had hit my head. Vanessa pressed a hand to her chest. "She's bleeding." "Are the police going to question me?" Only then did Ethan glance down at me. There was no fear in his face. Only irritation. "She's not dying." He turned to the club manager and insisted the report describe a low-speed pedal error. He said there was no reason to involve the police or create an insurance problem. I looked up at him from the pavement. I stood where she told me to stand. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Claire, she made a mistake. Stop turning everything into a scandal." Then he said the sentence that ended my marriage. "Can you go anywhere without ruining everyone's day?" The manager ignored his pressure and completed the mandatory incident report. A medic advised me to get imaging at a nearby clinic. Before they moved me, I looked directly at the manager. "Preserve every camera angle, the vehicle telemetry, the witness list, and the original report," I said. "Please note that I am requesting formal law enforcement notification. My attorney will send a written preservation demand tonight." Ethan stared at me. "Claire, don't be vindictive." I held his gaze. "You're right about one thing. I should never have come here. I will not make that mistake again." Then I told the medic that I was ready to leave. My hands shook as I accepted a copy of the report, but my voice did not. I did not need Ethan to believe that Vanessa had smiled. Evidence did not require his permission. At the clinic, X-rays showed no fracture. I sat alone in a hallway with my knee bandaged and called Daniel Reed, the attorney who had handled my mother's estate. "Daniel, it's Claire." He heard something in my voice and stopped asking polite questions. "What happened?" "I need you to send a preservation letter to the driving club. Secure the surveillance footage, vehicle telemetry, witness statements, incident report, and my medical records." "Are you pursuing an injury claim?" "Yes." I took a breath. "And the separation documents and resignation notice we drafted. Serve them tonight." The silence on the other end lasted only a second. "What do you want protected?" "My separate inheritance account. My unpaid advisory compensation. The documented shareholder loan. Everything that legally belongs to me." "And Ethan's premarital shares?" "I won't make an additional claim against them. I don't want the townhouse. I don't want his name." "Claire, do not give away assets simply to prove you are not greedy." "I'm not. I'm leaving with what is mine." I told him to terminate every joint authorization, withdraw my access from company and bank matters, and end my independent advisory agreement. "Where will you go?" he asked. "Zurich." Evelyn had been inviting me to interview for years. This time I would answer. "I'm not disappearing," I said. "I'm just no longer available whenever Ethan decides to use me." Over the next 3 days, I completed only what could realistically be completed in 3 days. Daniel filed the initial separation documents. He delivered notice to Coal Energy Systems and Helvetia International Bank that I had resigned as independent risk advisor. He froze no lawful funds and took nothing that belonged to Ethan. He simply removed my name, labor, and liability from every place where Ethan had treated them as permanent property. I canceled joint credit access. I arranged for my personal belongings and family heirlooms to be shipped. The jewelry Ethan had given me went to an auction house, with instructions that the eventual proceeds support programs helping women return to work after caregiving or divorce. I kept my inheritance account and the compensation the company legally owed me. Leaving a destructive marriage did not require me to destroy myself. I placed the separation papers on the desk in Ethan's study. My wedding ring rested on top. Before I left, I stood in the living room and looked around. I had chosen the sofa, the curtains, the books, the flowers on the dining table. I had created every trace of warmth in that house. Ethan had never noticed that I left a lamp on for him each night. He had never noticed that a home was something a person made, not something a man purchased. My suitcase rolled quietly across the floor. As I reached the front door, my phone buzzed. "Not coming home for dinner," Ethan had written. I read it once, disabled our shared household account, blocked his personal number, and stepped outside. "JFK," I told the driver. Manhattan slid past the window in ribbons of light. I cried on the way to the airport. Not because I wanted to stay. I cried because I had spent 7 years calling endurance loyalty and self-erasure love. Protecting myself was not betrayal. It was the first honest decision I had made in a long time. Ethan returned at 3 in the morning. The house was dark. He called my name with the irritation of a man expecting immediate service. No one answered. He switched on the lights and saw the empty surfaces. In his study, he found the separation papers and the ring. He read my signature, then laughed once under his breath. "What are you doing now?" He called me. The call did not connect. He tried again and realized he had been blocked. For the first time, the silence of the house unsettled him. His eyes returned to the ring. Our wedding date was engraved inside. "She won't really leave," he said aloud. He called his assistant. "Find Claire." 10 minutes later, the assistant called back. "Mr. Cole, Ms. Bennett boarded a flight to Zurich 3 hours ago." "What?" "Her attorney has served separation documents. She also removed all joint account permissions and resigned from her independent risk advisory role." Ethan's voice sharpened. "What does her resignation have to do with anything?" "The European acquisition financing includes a key advisor provision. Helvetia and the co-investors can pause undrawn funding and reopen due diligence." "How much is undrawn?" "Roughly 380 million euros remains in the facility. The money already advanced is not being recalled, but the next release has been suspended." Ethan's first reaction was not fear. It was rage. "She's using the company to force me to chase her." "Sir, her notice states that she is terminating her personal role and authorization. It does not demand anything from you. Tell the bank Coal Energy doesn't need her." The next morning, Helvetia International Bank issued a formal due diligence notice. The European acquisition did not collapse overnight. It simply lost access to the next stage of financing. 48 hours later, Coal Energy's board held an emergency meeting. Ethan entered convinced the problem was temporary. Vanessa sat at his right hand and pushed a coffee toward him. "Claire reviewed some spreadsheets," she said. "That doesn't mean the company cannot operate without her. I have managed the European strategy for 2 years. I'll take over." Ethan looked at her and relaxed. "I trust you." The bank's representatives asked for a new cash flow stress test, full disclosure of management conflicts, and an explanation for the advisor's resignation. Vanessa presented a report she had assembled overnight. It looked impressive. The charts were polished. Her delivery was confident. A senior bank officer read 5 pages and closed the document. Ms. Shaw, this model uses outdated interest rate assumptions, excludes the cost of currency hedging, and does not show how the company survives if its 2 largest customers delay payment. Vanessa stiffened. We expect those customers to pay on schedule. The banker slid the report back across the table. This model assumes everything goes right. Risk management exists to show us what happens when it doesn't. No one spoke. He continued. For 7 years, Ms. Bennett has been the formally registered independent advisor under this facility. She signed every annual review and personally answered many of our due diligence questions. Ethan's face hardened. She was my wife. She helped occasionally. The banker looked directly at him. We did not pause financing because she was your wife. We paused it because your company allowed one professional outside management to carry a critical risk function without building an internal replacement. Ethan had always known I joined calls and reviewed files. He simply had not considered those nights, models, and meetings to be contributions. In his mind, I was a wife. Wives filled gaps. Vanessa stood beside him in photographs, so she was the partner who mattered. He had erased my name to preserve the myth that he had built everything alone. Now that I had legally stepped away, he was finally forced to see the structure he had been standing on. After the meeting, he swept a stack of documents from his desk. Contact Claire. His assistant lowered her eyes. All communication must go through Daniel Reed. Tell her she can have the divorce after she comes back and fixes this. Daniel replied 3 hours later. Ms. Bennett has lawfully terminated her advisory agreement and personal authorizations. Coal Energy Systems' operational failures are not her responsibility. She has waived any additional claim to Mr. Cole's premarital shares and the marital residence, while preserving her separate property, unpaid advisory compensation, and documented shareholder loan rights. She has taken nothing that is not legally hers and has no obligation to continue repairing management failures without authority, recognition, or compensation. Ethan read the message repeatedly. For the first time, he could not describe my departure as greed, jealousy, or manipulation. I had not attacked him. I had simply stopped carrying what belonged to him. Coal Energy did not collapse in a day. Over the next 3 months, it unraveled one decision at a time. With financing paused, the share price fell. Suppliers shortened payment terms. Institutional investors demanded a governance review. The board hired an outside chief financial officer and removed Ethan's authority to approve large transactions alone. He treated each safeguard as a personal insult. Vanessa became desperate to prove she could replace me. To keep the European acquisition inside budget, she concealed an overdue payable, revised revenue forecasts without support, and failed to disclose a personal relationship with a consultant tied to one of the project's suppliers. That supplier later received a contract far above market rates. When external auditors discovered the issue, the board formed a special committee. Vanessa went to Ethan's office in tears. "I was trying to save your company," she said. "If Claire hadn't abandoned us, I never would have been under this pressure." In the past, her tears would have ended the conversation. This time, Ethan remembered me on the pavement with blood running down my leg. He asked, "Did you really press the wrong pedal that day?" Vanessa stopped crying for half a second. "What are you talking about?" "At the driving club. Why did the car accelerate?" Her eyes filled again. "You doubt me now?" Ethan did not answer. Daniel's preservation letter had forced the club to retain surveillance footage, telemetry, witness statements, and the incident report. A few weeks later, Ethan's attorney received copies as part of the injury claim. The video showed Vanessa directing me toward the yellow marking. Then, after I moved, she glanced over her shoulder to confirm Ethan was looking away. The telemetry showed that she increased throttle continuously for 3 seconds and made no attempt to brake before reaching me. Another member's phone video captured the moment the car passed. Vanessa's mouth curved upward. At the end of the recording, Ethan's voice was clear. "She's not dying. Don't turn an accident into a scandal." He watched it again and again. For the first time, he saw the injured woman on the ground not as a difficult wife, but as a person he had failed to protect. The next morning, he placed the footage, telemetry report, and witness statements on his desk and called Vanessa in. "You accelerated on purpose." Her face drained of color. I panicked. I wanted to scare her. "I never meant to hit her." "You didn't break." "What does that prove?" she snapped. Then something in her broke. "For 7 years, you chose me every time. When she ended her pregnancy, you celebrated my contract. When her grandmother died, you came to the gallery with me. When she was bleeding at the gala, you made her leave." Vanessa leaned across the desk. "You taught me that no matter what I did, you would stand beside me." Ethan went pale. "I went to meetings with you. I handled the press. I took the calls. Everyone saw me as your partner," she continued. "Claire hid at home and fixed your paperwork. Even you refused to admit she mattered. How dare you blame me for believing you?" For once, Ethan had no defense. He had erased my contribution and then acted surprised when everyone else dismissed me too. "Get out," he said. Vanessa stared at him. "You're throwing me away for her?" "No," his voice was flat. "I'm finally looking at what I allowed and what that says about me." Vanessa was suspended. The special committee later confirmed that she had failed to disclose the supplier relationship and had altered project forecasts to push through an overpriced contract. The company sued her for breach of fiduciary duty and financial losses. The driving club evidence went to law enforcement, and she became the subject of an investigation for reckless endangerment and dangerous driving. There was no dramatic airport arrest. No convenient confession that erased the need for proof. She had to sit across from investigators, insurers, lawyers, and board members and explain every inconsistency she had left behind. But removing Vanessa did not save Cole Energy. The company's deeper problem was Ethan. The governance review found that he had concentrated authority in himself and Vanessa, tolerated unmanaged conflicts of interest, ignored internal controls, and relied for years on an advisor who held responsibility without formal power. The board first restricted his authority. Then it placed him on leave pending the conclusion of the investigation. Ethan still insisted the company could not function without him. At a special shareholder meeting, the largest institutional investor played an audio recording from the rescue financing 7 years earlier. My 24-year-old voice filled the room. For 40 minutes, I explained Cole Energy's cash flow, supplier risk, customer concentration, and 3-year restructuring plan. At the end, an investor asked, "Ms. Bennett, why aren't you joining management?" I laughed softly in the recording. "Ethan needs the opportunity. I believe in him." No one in the room said a word. Ethan finally understood that the company had survived because I placed my property, career, professional judgment, and absolute faith behind him. And once success arrived, I was the first person he removed from the story. When the governance investigation ended, Ethan resigned as chief executive and lost practical control of the company. To satisfy personal guarantees from an early bridge financing and contribute to restructuring costs, he sold the Upper East Side townhouse and part of his remaining stake. Cole Energy did not disappear. It continued under new management and creditor supervision. It simply no longer belonged to the man magazines had called a self-made genius. By then, I had begun again in Zurich. Evelyn Grant met me at the airport in a dark wool coat while rain streaked the terminal windows. For 7 years, she had sent me one email every year. "Your talent should not remain hidden behind someone else's name." I had never answered. Before my flight landed, I sent 2 words. "I'm ready." Evelyn did not give me a job because she felt sorry for me. I entered the same 3-week assessment as every other candidate: case analysis, risk defense, cross-border negotiation, and a panel interview. 7 years outside a public career had left marks. During my first presentation, a committee member asked why my resume appeared almost empty after graduate school. For several seconds, I could not speak. No one rescued me. I asked for 10 minutes, switched off my prepared slides, and rebuilt the cash flow model on a whiteboard. Then I told them the truth. I buried my career inside a marriage, I said. But I never stopped doing the work. The difference is that I will never again let someone else put his name on it. I passed the assessment. I did not become a partner overnight. Northbridge Special Situations offered me a 6-month contract as a project advisor. It was modest, conditional, fair. It was exactly the beginning I needed. 3 months later, I earned the chance to lead a restructuring project. The target was a medical device company on the edge of bankruptcy. Its founder, a woman in her 60s, had developed a valuable surgical product but had been trapped by poor contracts, a mismatched debt structure, and infighting among executives. Most investors wanted to break the company apart and sell the technology. I spent weeks inside 300 pages of contracts and discovered that demand for the core product remained strong. The real problems were distribution agreements that favored former managers and debt payments that came due before hospital customers paid their invoices. My team and I spent 4 months renegotiating the debt, canceling related party contracts, and rebuilding the hospital purchasing network. The company kept more than 600 employees and regained research funding. At the press conference, the founder held my hand. "Thank you for seeing us as more than a balance sheet waiting to be sold," she said. Behind us, my name appeared clearly on the screen. Claire Bennett. Project lead. Not Mrs. Cole. Not someone's wife. Mine. A year later, I became an investment director. During that year, Ethan tried to reach me through lawyers, emails, and unfamiliar phone numbers. His first message said, "Come back and fix the company. Then we can discuss the divorce." The second said, "Vanessa has been suspended. You can come home now." The third said, "I saw the footage from the driving club." The fourth contained 2 words, "I'm sorry." The fifth was longer. "I don't know how to repair what I did. I don't know whether you will ever agree to see me. But I finally understand that you were not asking me to choose between you and the company. You were asking me to treat you like a human being." I answered none of them. Not to punish him. A late apology is not a ticket back into the life of the person you harmed. Sometimes it is only the echo a guilty person must learn to live with. 8 months after I left, Ethan signed the divorce agreement. Daniel told me he sat in the conference room for a long time before signing. Then he asked one question. "Did she ever ask about me?" Daniel answered, "No." I expected the news to feel triumphant. Instead, I felt quiet. Letting go is not hating someone. It is not waiting for punishment to arrive. It is the moment that person's happiness and grief no longer determine the shape of your day. 2 years after the gala, Zurich hosted a global industrial restructuring summit. I spoke as investment director of a new European medical infrastructure initiative. When I finished, the audience rose. As I stepped from the stage, I saw Ethan at the back of the room. He had lost weight. He wore a plain charcoal coat and no longer carried the sharp arrogance of a man constantly surrounded by employees and cameras. Our eyes met across the crowd. He moved toward me. I turned and left. That evening, snow began falling over the city. When I walked out of the hotel after dinner, Ethan was waiting across the street. Snow had settled on his shoulders and hair. "Claire." I stopped. "Mr. Cole, we are divorced." He crossed the street slowly and removed something from his coat pocket. "My wedding ring." "I kept it," he said. "When I sold the house, I left everything else behind." I looked at the ring and remembered our wedding day. He had promised I would never regret marrying him. In the end, my deepest regret was that I had not left sooner. "I know nothing I say can undo it," Ethan said. "I believed you would never leave. No matter what I did, I thought you would be waiting in that house." His voice cracked. "When the company began falling apart, I was forced to see everything you had carried. But I'm not here to ask you to rescue the business. I lost control of it. I accepted the board's findings." He looked at the ring in his palm. "When all of it was gone, I went back to an empty apartment every night and finally understood what I had lost. Claire, give me one chance." Then Ethan Cole, the man who had once considered my wet dress a public humiliation, knelt in the snow on a Zurich street. People turned to look. Once, he had valued appearances above everything. Now he no longer cared who saw him. It did not matter. A man learning humility after destroying someone does not create an obligation for her to reward him. I walked closer and held the umbrella over both of us. "Do you know why I won't come back?" I asked. His eyes lifted to mine. "It isn't because of Vanessa. It isn't because you lost the company. I asked for counseling. I asked you to acknowledge the work carrying my name and liability. I asked you to keep Vanessa outside our marriage. Every boundary I set became jealousy. Every request for respect became an inconvenience. At the gala, glass cut my hand. You saw the blood and you told me to leave. At the driving club, I was on the ground bleeding. You saw that too, and your first concern was whether the incident would become a scandal. You knew I was hurting, Ethan. You just decided my pain didn't matter. He went still. You lost the things that made you feel powerful, and now you understand regret, I continued. But if the bank had released the financing, if the board had never limited your authority, if I were still waiting in that townhouse, would you be here? He opened his mouth. No answer came. His silence was the answer. I looked at the ring again. You told me love deserved only 10% of your life. I spent years believing that if I worked hard enough, I might one day receive all of that 10%. I smiled, and for the first time the memory did not hurt. Then I realized I never had even that. I stepped back. And now, Ethan, you don't have 10% of mine. I walked past him. He did not follow. The street remained silent behind me except for the falling snow. Ethan left Zurich the next morning. Later, I heard that he accepted the findings of the governance investigation, publicly acknowledged my role in the company's early financing and risk management, and used part of his remaining assets to support employee compensation and restructuring commitments. He did not regain the company. He did not receive my forgiveness. Some changes deserve recognition. They do not erase damage. Vanessa continued facing the dangerous driving investigation, Coal Energy's fiduciary duty lawsuit, and regulatory scrutiny connected to the false project forecasts. She attempted to blame Ethan for creating the culture that protected her. She was not entirely wrong about his role. But for the first time, no one altered records, softened reports, or cleaned up the consequences for her. As for me, I did not buy Coal Energy. I did not return to New York to watch its downfall. That story no longer belonged to my life. 3 years after I left, Evelyn and I launched an industrial investment firm together. The glass doors of our Zurich office read, Bennett Grant Partners. On opening day, I combined the proceeds from the jewelry auction with part of the firm's annual social impact budget to create the Restart Initiative. It funded training and career placement for women whose work had been interrupted by marriage, caregiving, divorce, or family crisis. At the launch, a reporter asked whether I regretted losing 7 years. I considered the question. Yes, I said. Regret is honest. Then I looked through the windows toward Lake Zurich, where late sunlight shone across the water. But regret is not a reason to go back. It is a reason to protect every day that comes next. That evening, I stood alone in my office. My mother's photograph rested beside the first partnership agreement bearing my name. Beyond the glass, the lake glowed beneath the fading sun, and the mountains were clear in the distance. A financial news alert appeared on my phone. Coal Energy Systems had completed its restructuring under new management. I glanced at the headline and dismissed it. Lights came on across the city, one window at a time. There was no husband expecting me to wait. No man who needed me to keep a lamp burning for him. Yet for the first time in my life, it felt as if an entire city had lit itself for me. 7 years earlier, I had abandoned a future within reach because I believed loving Ethan meant investing everything in him. 7 years later, I understood that the life truly meant for me had never required anyone's permission. A wedding ring can be left behind. A past can be grieved. But once a woman has found herself again, she does not return to the man who taught her to lower her eyes, ignore her blood, and question whether she deserved to be loved.